Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Economic Development, Regeneration and Tourism Committee. Can I draw everybody's attention to page 3 within the agenda, which sets out details regarding fire safety instructions and webcasting arrangements. People haven't got an agenda, so they can't look at page 3. Ian Wilson will read out what it says.
Yeah, so for those who haven't got an agenda, what it says is, in the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in the Market car park adjacent to the Civic Suite building. Please do not return to the building until given permission to by council staff. All mobile phones should be either off or turned to silent. And please note that this meeting will be live streamed on the council's YouTube page, and it will be then available for repeated viewing. So for members of the public seated in the public areas, please be aware it's likely your image will be captured by the cameras and result in their image being part of the broadcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so move on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies from absence and substitute members or non-members attending. There are no apologies for absence, and non-members attending is Councillor Steptoe. Item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of June 2025. Members, there is a slight amendment on page 5. Councillor Miss Angelina Marriott was not a substitute for Councillor M. Sutton. The minutes will be amended accordingly. Are the minutes agreed subject to the amendment, members? Agreed. Thank you. Item 3, any declarations of interest?
Sorry, just very quickly, Chairman, on point of order, was Councillor Miss Marriott a visiting member then, or was she a substitute for someone else?
Visiting member. Any declarations of interest? No, okay. Item 4, public questions on notice. None have been received. Item 5, 30-minute free parking and data gathering trial. Right, for a number of years, businesses and residents have asked for a short stay free parking in our town centres. As the report sets out, we're asking members to approve a trial in the majority of our car parks for 30 minutes free parking over a 3-month period between September and November. Whilst the trial would generate a loss in revenue of up to £42,000, this can be covered from our car park reserves, as we have generated more than we have spent in recent years. This money stays in our residents' pockets to spend in our high streets, and this trial will help us understand the impact such a scheme will have on our local economy. This is why we're also recommending surveys take place so we can collate meaningful data to bring back to committee in November. The trial will form part of a comprehensive car park review in Rochford. I'd like to thank our Officer Stuart Anderson for putting together such a comprehensive report, and if you've got any questions, we should be able to answer them. So I'll hand over to members if they want to debate. Councillor Sutton, isn't it? Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. I spent some time last year on the parking committee, and I'm a bit confused by this proposal, and I've spent some time going around speaking in my ward, which is the Raleigh High Street and Wheatley ward, and went around and I spoke to a lot of the businesses and a lot of the independents. Sorry, is that better? Right, sorry, I spent some time going around speaking to the independent businesses and a lot of the smaller businesses, what I would call browsing businesses on Raleigh High Street. The resounding result that I got back from them is half hour isn't going to be very helpful at all. I'm not against the idea of supporting businesses with some parking, but the general impression that I've got back from people, or the feedback I've got, is half hour is going to be detrimental in the sense that it essentially puts a timer on people's browsing space on the high street. The general consensus come back was people wanted maybe an hour's free parking or all day Saturday free parking. I just wondered if it's something that we could consider looking at, because the general feedback was just it's not going to be helpful at all.
Okay, thank you for your input there. Councillor Belton?
Thank you. It's interesting that it's tonight that you're coming forward recommending or talking about an hour's free parking. I think we'd all like to offer as much free parking as possible, but this is incremental steps. I've spoken about parking schemes for a number of years and been told that there was no support for them. So a 30-minute free trial is about a start. It's about gathering that data and understanding. I've spoken to a lot of the businesses. I go to every single Chamber of Trade meeting across the entire district. So it's not just about parking in Rayleigh, it's about parking across the district. In terms of the 30 minutes, it doesn't put a timer on people because people can extend that time after. So they can get their free 30 minutes whilst they're out. If they then decide to spend longer in our town, they could then pay for additional parking. If they've bought a ticket in the machine, absolutely they would need to go back to said machine and purchase more time if they wanted to. But this is about stimulating the economy. It's about getting people into the town, popping in for those short stay items, picking up a newspaper, picking up a takeaway, rather than having to order them through Deliveroo, Just Eat and other delivery services. They can just pop and grab it. It's about people that are popping to Back Lane to use the doctor's surgery. They can park, they can run in, they can go. It's not just about the high street, it's about the district as a whole and the economy as a whole. If the 30 minutes, the feedback comes back that it's well received, but everybody needs an hour or wants an hour, I will very much look forward to bringing that back to committee for us to consider at that point, can we afford that revenue loss? And if the answer is yes, you won't find any detriment from me on that. Now, hundreds and hundreds of residents online have spoken in favour of this, put out by other groups, not by my own social medias, but other social medias that have gone out. There's a real appetite for it. Other councils such as Brentwood, Chelmsford, they do the free 30 minutes. So I'm keen to trial it, to see if it has a positive impact. And if it does, roll it out long term. If it doesn't, we can readdress. We may want longer, we may not want any at all. In regards to free all-day Saturday parking, we have, I mean, it's not on the agenda, but if it's okay to talk about it, one of the downsides of that when it was looked at historically is you don't get the churn, because we know Friday nights in Rayleigh, we're a nighttime economy town, and I would be guilty of this myself. We drive into town on a Friday night, we leave our car there, we pick it up on a Sunday afternoon when we're feeling fresh. Paying for parking on a Saturday morning means people don't do that. They use the taxi services instead, which also helps that element of our economy, and it ensures that car park on a Saturday is available for people to use. I'm firmly behind keeping the Saturday afternoons, absolutely. I think it's a great addition to our town, and the fact that we're free in the evenings and Sundays as well. I think we've got a good balance, but this free 30 minutes could stimulate some extra footfall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belton. Any other? I don't know who come up first. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Chair. I don't love this, I'm afraid. I'm in favour of free parking where it can bring tangible benefits. I'm not convinced by this report, I'm afraid to say. At the last meeting, when we last met, I asked for evidence-based business case to be brought forward for this item to this meeting today. I don't feel like I'm getting that. I feel like this proposal is asking us to go forward with this without the evidence, because the evidence is coming out at the other end of the trial period, as it were. I've got no problem with a trial run to gather evidence, but why are we doing this for every car park in the district except Hockley Woods? Why are we not looking maybe at a limited number of car parks to gather data and not expose the council to, like, sort of, I think it was around about 50k in expenses and loss of revenue, might be more, from what I can see from the report. With regards to R4, why are we only asking users, not just businesses, for feedback, which I think would probably be helpful.
So, Councillor Sutton, there's no R4. What are you referring to?
In the report, yeah, there's 5 recommendations. One of them is R4.
Sorry.
Yeah, so just to clarify that, it says looking for feedback of users during the trial. So that's presumably users of the car parks, as opposed to finding out how it's affected the businesses, is my question. Maybe we are finding this information out via the High Street Summits. Or if or not, maybe we could do that there. Something that Councillor Belton just mentioned around the half an hour and how you go about renewing it. I was slightly confused about that from the report. So could I just get some clarity on, just to be clear, if I buy an hour's ticket or 2 hour ticket, I don't get the 30 minutes for free. I have to buy a separate 30-minute ticket. And as mentioned, if we do have to go back after 30 minutes because you've paid for it in the car park, people might forget. There could be a lot of sort of penalty notices coming up because of this, because of people getting confused. Are we doing anything to try and alleviate initially the pressure on people getting these penalty notices? Thank you.
Thank you. You want to take that, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and remember all the questions. Please remind me if I miss any of them. So, first one, why all the car parks except, it's actually 2 car parks registered amendment to the report. It's also the approach car park in Rayleigh down by the station where we don't offer any free. It's only all-day parking at that site. It doesn't seem logical to offer 30 minutes free when it's mainly used by commuters. But the reason that it's across the entire district rather than just those car parks on the high streets is to try and create a simplified experience for the visitors wherever they're going. If we already have it where we have some car parks with differing charges because they're long stay and short stay, even though they're on the same town. So some of the advice we've received from our parking consultant is simplified parking structures make it easier for visitors and their experience when they're coming. So that's why we're doing it across the district rather than just individual car parks. So that was the first question. Regarding R4 and feedback from face-to-face users, yes, that is one element. Subsequent to the report being published, we're also engaging with our colleagues in Economic Development team with a process to engage with the retailers direct and the Chambers of Trade to understand whether they've seen an uptake in footfall, an increase in revenue during that period as well. So we will be doing some direct engagement with the shops as well. Unfortunately, because of that, when that conversation took place and the date the report had to be publicised by, they've just crossed over on each other. Trying to remember the third question, sorry. 30 minutes, how does it work? Yes. So you obtain a ticket from the machine. That will give you 30 minutes free parking and you display that in your car. If you end up spending longer than 30 minutes, you have 2 options. You can either go back to the car park and use cash to purchase a ticket for the required time, be that an hour, 2 hours, or you can use the app wherever you are at that time. So you don't have to go back to the car park to use the app. You could do that whilst you're sitting in one of the coffee shops having a drink. You can just go onto the app and purchase a period of parking via that process as well. So you need to obtain the 30 minutes free ticket to display, and then you can either go back if you're going to stay longer, or you can do it via the app. What I would say, there is an element on the user to ensure if they're getting the 30 minutes, they're reasonably confident that they're going to complete their business within the 30 minutes.
You have to come back.
Yeah, so just on that last point, obviously the people who use the machines tend to be the sort of older people in the area, for want of a better way of putting it, and they perhaps might struggle to get back in half an hour. Again, just coming back to what I asked, are we doing anything to be a bit more sort of sensitive, a bit more lenient on penalty charge notices initially to help those people out once to get used to the new system?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There are measures available to us. What I would say is to ensure they aren't abused, I'm happy to take that offline with you and have a separate discussion.
Okay, Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't want to repeat what Councillor Sutton and Councillor O'Leary have already said. I do have problems with this. I just want to point out that I'd be very interested to know how, if this does go through, how we can find £168,000 in the budget for this later. That'll obviously come on later, so that would be a detailed report, I think, because that's a significant amount of the parking income we'll be losing if you pro-rata that over a year. Anyway, thank you for clearing up about the online or ticket. So it's just a ticket through a machine. So although you can't get an online ticket, it seems to me that you can use the app and just get 30 minutes free parking anyway. Just set an alarm on your phone and you do it through the app and get your extra 30, you get your 30 minutes free and then just put it through the app. So it seems like we will be giving away a lot of free parking on that basis. How will it work with disabled drivers? Will they get an extra 30 minutes as well? I'd like an answer to that one. And I'm really interested in how you mentioned about footfall. I know footfall is really difficult to measure in the high street. I know we had previously talked about getting counters for footfall to know if it's increased, and I'm a bit concerned about how the shops can measure this. Are we asking, has their turnover increased in that period over the previous year? I'm not sure how this will work or what criteria you're using to assess this. That's also, I'd like to get a bit more detail on that. And I want to know if there's been any thought, Councillor Belton mentioned, will it increase the trade possibly of the takeaways in the town centre, but conversely that probably means it could well decrease the trade of takeaways which have free parking already, such as Hand Pro Parade, for instance. So I want to know if that's been looked at as well. That's it really. I'm not generally in favour at the moment, but I can be persuaded.
Stuart, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in regards to blue badge holders, disabled parkers, their eligibility to park will remain unchanged at this time under the scheme. So they already get, I believe it's up to 3 hours free, so that will remain. They won't benefit, so to speak, from the half hour, but they've already got a benefit in kind of that extra 3 hours. So regards the other questions, we are developing the engagement with the shops. We're early discussions at the minute, and that's largely because we wanted to get the committee decision tonight before we started that engagement. So we're just actually pulling that together now in terms of how that will actually physically happen on site.
Councillor, do you want to come back quickly?
Just very quickly, sorry, it was on my list and I've just realised I've forgotten this question, but it does relate to the answer you've just given. How will we know if it's successful? What's our success criteria for this?
Stuart?
I think that's going to be determined largely by the uptake as well. Obviously, if there isn't a significant uptake of the scheme, then that would determine that there isn't demand for it. I think it's going to be a combination of factors in terms of uptake, feedback from the high streets themselves and the retailers to understand what that impact has been on them, and also the face-to-face. So the questions will be, in the face-to-face questionnaires, the questions will be tailored to understand what's drawn the people or the person to the town on a particular day. Has it been the 30 minutes? Have they stayed longer because they had 30 minutes free? Have they spent more because of that? So the questions will be tailored specifically to obtain, again, data that will either support or not whether it's been successful.
Very quickly, because everyone else wants to speak.
So I think this is my other problem with this proposal. I think there's some confusion over whether this is something we're giving to visitors to our town centres or to our paid-for car parks, or whether it's something that we're trying to do to revitalise the high street. I think it seems to be trying to do both, but we're not sure what it's trying to do. I could support anything that's trying to revitalise our high street, but I think there's some confusion over what this is trying to achieve. That's probably a comment more than anything else, but I don't know if there's anything more to say on that, if there is a focus on improving the high street really, or if it's really about the consumer.
Okay, Councillor Belton.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple more comments and thoughts, having heard some of the debate. In terms of outcomes and KPIs and measurability, first and foremost, we know how many 30-minute tickets were purchased in the same period last year. So as the officer said, if more 30-minute tickets are purchased in the same period this year, that would give an indication that people are coming out and using the car parks in a different way, which could be a positive. In terms of outcomes, it's absolutely an economic development drive. It's about footfall, it's about revitalising businesses, but the knock-on effect of that is extra money in our residents' pockets or our visitors' pockets, which they could then in turn spend in our local economy. So if this costs up to, and it is up to £42,000, that is £42,000, not that this council are spending with a consultant.
Sorry, Chairman, can I, on a point of order, can I just, I'm slightly confused. Who's the chair of this meeting?
I am. Why?
Thank you. Thank you for the confirmation.
Okay, thanks. As a committee member, I think I'm allowed an opinion on the report, so I'll
You gave an opinion. Your last question wasn't a question; it was a statement. So, no,
Not in a committee.
that's up to my. It's up to me who speaks.
Okay, so yeah, so that money that this council loses in revenue or potentially loses in revenue stays in residents' pockets that they could then reinvest back into the town or the general local economy. So I see it as a positive all round. One thing that I think might be worthwhile doing based on Councillor O'Leary's points about the business engagement, it might be worth actually adding a line in R4 to cover that off so that it's reportable back. I think obviously I recognise the officer said he's going to do it, but it might be worth actually adding that in as a line so that we've got it in writing that is something that is included within the results, because it's absolutely needed. It's something that has been raised, and this has been raised by businesses as well. Ultimately, I support it. It's a trial so that we can test it. We can see, we can get that evidence base that we need. We can get some tangible data. Other towns are doing it and saying it's as successful as it says in the report, and I'm all for it, as I've made clear on many occasions.
Thank you, Councillor
Chairman.
Belton. Do you want to add that as an amendment that we go for the businesses?
Councillor O'Leary, did you want to amend that, or if not, it can just be done through the chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's fairly straightforward. It's instruct face-to-face surveys to be conducted to obtain baseline data and feedback of users of the car parks and local businesses affected.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay with that?
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've had a good debate on this. Oh, sorry, Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Just listening to the debate, just to say I'm in full support of these measures. Just thinking to the comments made about Back Lane in Rochford, I know personally that sometimes it's quite difficult to pop into a GP surgery, into the pharmacist, as you're actually having to pay out to use those services, whereas what this will enable local residents, I know in my town of Rochford, to do is actually to make use of those facilities for free. So I'll be supporting these measures. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Right, members. Oh, sorry. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, when we're talking about this trial period, what parameter is it going to be measured against? Is it going to be measured at the same quarter this time last year or the previous quarter? Because that being probably the only person in the room that's run a business on the high street, I can tell you now, coming up into the summer months, the high street dies. So the data is going to be very hard to overlay and get a fair comparison if you're going to be taking it from the previous quarter.
Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So we'll be using data from the same 3 months last year, so that we've got an exact comparison. And we've chosen September to October purely to avoid the summer holidays and the build-up Christmas. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, members. Right, I will now move a motion that recommends that the recommendations on page 11 be approved. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Webb. Okay, we will now vote on the recommendations.
We're doing these individually.
I was about to ask. It's not done individually, so I'll read them out. So, recommendation 1, that the council undertakes a 3-month trial as part of a data gathering exercise commencing in September for 30 minutes free parking across all Rochford District Council pay and display car parks, excluding Hockley Woods. And the approach. Members in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Members against? 1, 2, 3. Any abstentions, which there shouldn't be because that's everybody voted. So that is passed 4-3. Recommendation 2. That a report is brought back to committee outlining the results of the trial and assess further options for consideration in offering 30 minutes free parking. Members for? That is unanimous. Recommendation 3. That the costs of the trial are met from existing parking reserves. Members for? Members against? Any, on the word, it's gone out my head. Abstentions? 3. Right, members, recommendation 4. That the officers instruct an on-site face-to-face survey to be conducted to obtain baseline data and feedback of users during the trial, and that this data be reported back to committee. Those for? Oh yeah, sorry, and the amendment, which is feedback of users of car parks and local businesses affected. Members, those for? That's unanimous, thank you. And recommendation 5, the officers utilise existing resources to undertake capacity surveys of the council surface car parks on Saturday afternoons as part of the trial. Members for? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. Okay, so move on to item 6. Right, so members will now consider the report of the Director of Place relative to the task and finish working group review. Right, members, do you have any questions on this item? Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Having had a chance to review the report and take on feedback from group leaders regarding how working groups, the changes that we were wanting to make to working groups as an administration, the feedback was that it should stay with the working group, the Constitution working group, because I didn't like the 6-member model, the substitutes and other things that have been said. So respecting those comments and the fact that working groups and task and finish groups as a whole are being looked at by the Constitutional working group, ironically, I would like to move an amendment to R1 that, like R2 and R3, we just disband the working group until further time that it's required.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? I'll second that. Councillor Wilson. Anybody want to discuss? No? Okay, so we take... Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't see your hand go up. Councillor Hoy.
No, sorry, it did go up quite late. I thought other people would speak on that. Yeah, thank you for the recommendation. I understand it is going to the working group, and I've welcomed that. I'm a bit concerned about the working group being actually disbanded, though, in this case, because it was looking at how the operating model would work, and that, I believe, should be coming forward around in the September, or was it October meeting? I think it's September meeting, isn't it? And I wondered who will be looking at that? Would it just be the chair or the officers with a report coming back to this committee in September? Or if there's not going through a working group, it won't have the same scrutiny. That's all I was concerned about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Councillor Hoy. Okay, so ready to... Do you want to... There's nothing really... There's more of a statement. Oh.
No, it was a question.
Right,
How will it be looked at?
Phoebe?
Thank you, Chair. So based on that recommendation, the officers will be presenting the results of the operating model to the administration, and therefore we would then bring that to committee to consider in September. Just to make committee aware as well, though, that on the scrutiny work plan, the Mill Hall is on there, so that scrutiny then can also scrutinise the decision making around that preferred operating model that this committee will debate and then make a decision on.
Councillor Belton.
Thank you. And just a further comment, it's probably slightly unhelpful that item 6 comes before item 7, because actually I think item 7 will probably cover some of this off, so that we ensure that members have got that full accountability, that chance to engage. It's just working groups aren't always the best way to do that. And given that we're up against time restraints, I think it makes sense that we respect the Constitution Working Group to do that piece of work. And then item 7, we can get into the detail about what comes next ahead of September.
Thank you. Right, so moving on to, we've got a amendment to recommendation 1 that is disbanded that working group, as well as the recommendation 2 and recommendation 3. So I think we need to vote on that.
Sorry, I thought you were just asking for questions on the change to R1, that was all.
Yes, so
Sorry, I know this is a question that other people might be asked, so I'm going to do the question for them. They can beat me up afterwards about it. It's slightly confusing because this committee is disbanding the Freight House Task and Finish Group. However, the Freight House Task and Finish Group was set up to report to the Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee. I know I did have discussions at the time and I was quite insistent, as I'm sure Phoebe will remember, that it should report to this committee, but I lost my argument and it always was a Task and Finish Group of the Strategy, Finance and Policy Committee, not this committee. So I'm not sure we have the power to disband that committee.
Phoebe?
Thank you, Chair. This has been discussed with the Monitoring Officer, and as the terms of reference have been amended for this coming year with the Freight House directly reporting into this committee, the Strategy Finance Policy Committee did establish the Freight House Task Finish Group, but this committee can disband it because under this year's terms of reference, the Freight House is reporting into it.
Councillor Sutton.
I want to talk about the parking task and finish group. I'm really against that getting disbanded because I think the perception is that it's about the parking task and finish group focuses just on things like the fees, but there's been a lot of work done recently, especially with the safety around schools, that we've had quite a good success with. I think that it's something that it may need to meet less often, but we can see the results that have come through, especially around Raleigh Primary School. I would like to see that continued for safety reasons, especially around schools.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to the amendment to recommendation. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry. So just to be clear here, at the moment we're just about to vote on the amendment, right? But we're still going to debate R1, R2 and R3 after this. Yeah?
Yeah, the recommendation, the amendment to R1, we just vote to accept that we disband it.
Yes.
Then,
Yeah, exactly. And then we're going to, thank you.
Right, so have I got a seconder for that? I can't remember. Yeah, Councillor Wilson. Right then, so those in favour of the recommendation for the amendment to recommendation 1, those in favour? That's 4. Those against? 1, and those abstentions? 2. That is carried. Thank you. Right, so if you'd like to, I think you want to debate 2 and 3. So, Councillor Belton.
Thank you. I did wonder about the parking task and finish, and I've asked Stuart Anderson some questions of that prior to it, because I appreciate there's a lot of work, and I've tried to sort of feed into that through Councillor Sutton and Councillor Cross previously with some ideas. As I understand it, due to the fact that we want to look at how working groups are established to make sure that they get that full engagement, that exactly the same with the Mill Hall. They get disbanded, it goes through the Constitution. When we have a new terms for task and finish groups and working groups separately, we can then look at which working groups need to establish. And I think your comments have been noted. Certainly there's some comments there that I share and some thoughts there that I share. But as I understand it, this is about starting afresh, letting the constitutional working group come up with a model that suits this council, now that we're 6 political groups, so that everybody has a voice. It's not administration heavy on those working groups, and so that there's an opportunity to feed in and have a meaningful say. That's my understanding of what will and can happen in due course.
Anything, Councillor Leary?
Thank you, Chair. So in that vein then, I'm quite keen for the Freight House Task and Finish group to not be disbanded, or if it is going to be reconstituted in some way, shape or form. Because it's pretty clear if you look at the priorities and tasks on the terms of reference for that they haven't been completed. Sorry, for good order, I am on that Task and Finish group. It's been a really good working group, Task and Finish group. Councillor Reeves, Councillor Steptoe, Councillor McPherson, very experienced, very knowledgeable, rigorous challenge of officers. I'd like to thank them for their guidance if this is going to be shut down. I think it's important for the residents that they get to continue their good work and to delve deep into the options that are going to be available for the Freight House, and about the future direction of what's happening to it. Obviously, it's important for residents that they continue to do it. So I'm not in favour of that, but I understand the reasons for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So do you want me to take them all block, or do you want me to do them individually? Individually. Okay. Right. So I'll now move a motion that the recommendations on page 21 be approved. Cover second. Councillor Wilson. Right, we'll now vote on the recommendations. Recommendation 1 is the Mill Hall Working Group be disbanded. So those in favour? That's 4. Those against? 1, and abstentions? 2. Thank you. Right, recommendation 2, that the current Freight House Task and Finish Group is disbanded for the reasons set out in the report. Those for? 4. Those against? And abstentions? 3 abstentions. And recommendation 3, that the current Parking Task and Finish Group be disbanded for the reasons set out in the report. Those for? 4. Those against? 2, and abstentions? 1. Thank you, members. Right then, so item 7. Members will now consider the report relative to the Mill Hall Arts and Events Centre. The content of this report predates the new administration, but we felt that it was important to bring forward in its current form. As per the report, the former working group supported the recommendations along with Councillor James Newport and Councillor Michael Hoy. As it stands, we may wish to withdraw or amend recommendation 2 subject to the content of the debate. There's also a typo on page 43 where it states that the net zero target for 2023, when in fact it is currently set at 2030. We are keen to not only see the Mill Hall succeed, but we want it to stand up against scrutiny when Watford becomes part of a larger authority in the coming years. And for that reason, it is vital that we not only find a viable operating model, but also, in the meantime, we maximise revenue streams which need to include a food offering and find efficiencies to reduce running costs. I now open the floor to members. It was likely I'll refer to Phoebe Barnes, the officer, for answers to your questions, as I was not involved in the work previously undertaken. So, members. Councillor Belton.
Thank you. I was rather expecting or hoping for some feedback. Having read the report, I think first off, the piece of work done by the consultant is helpful. It provides us some food for thought. It gives us some tangible data, and it helps us to understand the needs and the wants of a building like this. Ultimately, I think we all know changes need to be made to ensure that it can be a success in the future and stand up on its own 2 feet, or at least have less subsidy than it's had in recent years, because under LGR it will be under threat. To that end, R2, I was hoping to hear a bit more detail as to why that had been recommended in terms of the closure. I recognise some of the kind of the practical reasons for it being recommended in terms of a Friday night setup and so on and so forth. But I can't help but feel it's almost the cart before the horse. In September, we're expecting to have an operating model option come to this committee so that we can look at the ones on the table. There's currently 4 in this report. Hopefully that will be narrowed down to 2 or 3 strong ones that this committee can then consider to take forward in September. But I think it's the wrong time to be deciding to close the building at all, to reduce our revenue opportunity. I think it should be the opposite. We should be looking at what can we possibly do to maximise revenue. I'm pleased to hear you talk about a food offering. I know that's something that many of us have spoken about for many years. I've certainly sat in this meeting over the last year and spoken about the cafe on multiple occasions. So I think it would be wrong to close it at the moment. I think it's too soon. We need to look at what the operating model is. We need to look at how that space is going to be best utilised. And what we actually need to do is get more people in there booking it, not taking away some of the bookings that do exist, even if they're not giving us the revenue, that we might hope for. Closing on a Friday doesn't give us a financial benefit, it just gives us it gives us an operational benefit, and that's not what's important at the moment. So I would like to move that R2 be withdrawn, because when we have the report in September, the bigger picture will be looked at and we can make sure we're maximising the opportunity that the Mill Hall brings.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Belton. Any other? No, sorry, Councillor Sutton. No, Leary, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of R1, I don't really understand the recommendation, in all honesty. I've read the report. As Councillor Belton mentioned, it's a useful report. I can't work out from the officer's report and the recommendation how they tie up together, so I can't support it at the moment. R2, I totally agree with Councillor Belton. This was presented as a cost-saving measure, but projected savings are vague and unquantified. We're talking about reducing staffing and utility and maintenance costs and freeing up staff time for higher value tasks. What else did it say? Supports venue efficiency and subsidy reductions. There's no specific monetary value attached to these. So without those sort of supporting the closure of this is difficult to justify on financial grounds, and there's no reference at all to social value in there either. So I can't really go along with that. R3, I support this in principle. I think we definitely need to renegotiate. I'd like to know why we're not seeking potential bids from other operators rather than just negotiating with the person who's there already. I think that would make sense from a business. It makes sense from a business perspective as well as in the interest of transparency. Obviously I'm new to this committee, so forgive me if I'm going over stuff that's been gone over before, but could we not package this up with the cafe? One of the frustrations you hear from residents is that the cafe is not open. You've only got to look down the high street and see where a butcher's was. It's now a wine bar, and that was, in a matter of months that was converted. We're just asking to convert a cafe into a cafe here, so it would be quite nice to get that going. That's about it, really. Thank you.
Okay, Phoebe, do you want to come back on R1 and not R3, or do you want Councillor Hoy to ask his question and come back on the whole lot? So I'll do Councillor Hoy as well.
me now. Thank you. I'm not sure Councillor Belton got a seconder, but I'm happy to second her proposal on removing R2. I just want to... So at the moment, we're just speaking on that proposal, because normally if there's a motion put forward, we then speak to that motion. It's been seconded, so presumably I can speak to that now.
No, it's been seconded, yes.
And then we can come back and speak about the rest after this has been approved.
So do you want to speak on R2?
So I'm just speaking on R2
Yeah,
now.
okay.
Just want to make sure we're on the same page, that's all, because there's other stuff to say and I don't want to get it confused. So I do understand the reasons and the rationale for closing on a Friday. However, I think Councillor Belton made a really good point about we are going to get the operating model put through to this committee in September, and it's probably more appropriate now, given the fact that the building itself is not going to be open until September, that we wait until that time to do it. I know it's geared for September anyway, but it makes more sense that we're meeting on the 11th of September, and perhaps that decision could be made then along with the operating model. I do understand the reasons for the COSA, not just about reducing the amount of subsidy given, but it's about improving the efficiency operationally, freeing up staff time for event preparation, marketing, strategic planning. That all came out in the report, and also prioritising high yield programming, etc. So I do understand that, but I think it is possibly premature at this point in time.
Okay, so we will do the vote on R2 because that's been ordered and seconded. Right, so would it be easier to take R2 out, which has been asked to do, or would it be better maybe that the council does not trial closing, take it out completely, yeah? Yeah. Well, okay, so we're voting it being withdrawn. So those in favour of R2 being withdrawn? That is unanimous. Thank you. Right, Phoebe, would you like to come back to Councillor O'Leary's questions for 1 and 3?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, apologies. R1 is not clear. So R1, the strategic outcomes, is in relation to paragraph 1.11, phase 1 strategic outcomes. And what we're trying to achieve is that in order to establish what the operating model should be, we need to understand what the Millhall Arts and Events Centre drives to be. And so that is have an enhanced cultural identity. We want it to have an improved financial sustainability, so reduction in subsidy. And we want to optimise use of space. So we want to make sure that the main hall, the upstairs and the meeting room that is there that space is maximised. So we have ideally no idle time any time of the year. We want to expand the programming, so we want a diverse portfolio offering events, community events, cultural events. We want kind of strengthened community engagement in order to make this successful. We want to obviously operate the building efficiently, so that's from environmental efficiency, but also an operational efficiency. And we want to kind of digital marketing transformation, and we want diverse revenue streams so that the building and the operation of the building is future-proofed. In essence. So the committee is asked to support them strategic outcomes so that the operating model that would come forward in September evidence that it is structured in a way to deliver them outcomes. Regarding R3, we are currently in a licence, therefore we are operating in that licence. What I would say is that the future of the F&B offering would also be considered as part of the report coming forward. The report coming forward that is on the committee work plan would be the recommended operating model, discussing the options of the other operating models that have been considered and the work behind that. It would also have a timetable of implementation as well, and also would pick up on what the recommendation is for the food and beverage offering in the mill.
Is that answer enlightening? Yes, okay. Right then, so Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Yeah, just coming back to the rest of the items, and I'm glad Councillor O'Leary picked up on R1 because I said something very similar. I couldn't quite work out the exact outcome, but that was very clear. Thanks, Phoebe. And to my mind, the 1.1 list is kind of a given. I think it's what we already know, and this report is just cementing what we already know. There's nothing in there that comes as a shock to me, and I don't think there's much that I could add to those outcomes. So I think ultimately the report has cemented what we already believed we knew. In regards to R3, I do support renegotiating the income split. What I will say is the operator that's been in there, in my opinion, has done very well. It was always supposed to be, it was sold to this council as a short-term gig a couple of years ago. It's gone on much longer than I think most of us expected. We thought last year there would have been an operating model agreed and a bit more. We'd be further down the line. We aren't. The operator has stayed in there doing a good job. And as I understand it from the conversations I have with officers and the operator and staff, is that it's more than just a bar. And they bring events themselves, they do more, they promote. So there is that added value that brings, because we're not an events company. We don't have all the answers and we don't know how to bring in all the acts. And I believe that Eternity events have been able to support that as well. So I think there is some added value there, but I do support officers having those conversations with the operator to ensure that it is viable for both business and council, given that it's a council tax subsidy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chair. So we're now back to R1 and R3. Obviously, I support R1 and R3. These are things that were moving forward last year, as you alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, or this section. I think, however, the report is a little bit... It's difficult to pick everything out of the report the way it's written, but I think we've got most of it. Obviously, the only one with a firm timetable was the bar closure, which the Friday daytime closure, which is now been removed. So my problem is that we've got the bar income renegotiation. We've got no timeline for that. We haven't got a timeline for the ticket box office, which I think is vital to the success of the Mill Hall, and the phase 2 development conditional we need to decide. We don't know when. So my problem is we don't know when any of this is happening, or there's no timeline for it. So that's my only concern. I will be voting for R1 and R3 on this basis, but I just want to make sure those concerns are there. And I just want to echo the points made before, that in my time as chair of this committee and previously as lead for economy, I was absolutely adamant that the Mill Hall will succeed and remain an asset for the people of Rochford District and Rayleigh in particular. So I think this goes a long way to doing that, but there's a long way to go still. So, but yeah, I'll be supporting R1 and R3.
Thank you. Phoebe?
I think all the questions will be answered in the upcoming September committee. We can't put timelines to that. That's the timeline we're working to, is to get all the information to this committee for them to make their informed decision at September, which will have clear timelines of implementation. We need to go away and do that piece of work now, following, obviously, the outcomes of this evening.
Okay, thank you. Right, so anybody else? No? Okay. Right then, members, I have a motion that the recommendations on page 37 be approved. Right, we're withdrawing recommendation 2, so it'll now only be recommendation 1 and 3. Are you happy for me to take those on block? Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Webb. Those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Right, so member will now consider the report on the Freight House project. Whilst this report is for noting, I think it is important to highlight the fact that whilst we are delighted to have the design cabin in situ with a 6 months licence, we must not lose sight of the bigger picture and the long-term goals for the Freight House. As such, I have asked that the Freight House is back on the agenda in September, when we can take decisions about next steps, including investment, use and operating models. This administration does not want to see the Freight House close its doors again unless it's for long-awaited improvements. Members, Councillor Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. again, one of the ones I was really pushing for to work, and it will work in the same way the Mill Hall will work, but it takes time. Just a couple of questions and 1 point. I'll start with the point first. I know you'd said noting is R1, but we're also endorsing, so I'll assume that will be a vote rather than just say we noted it if we're endorsing the direction of travel. I fully support the direction of travel, but I've just got a question around the meanwhile use, i.e. the design cabin in there at the moment for 6 months from the 1st of July to 31st of December. Is that on a renewable contract, or will it go to tender again in December if we feel if we don't want to close it? Obviously we need an operator in there, and obviously we need to know how that operator is going to be decided. So are they on a renewable contract, or when would it be tendered again?
Phoebe?
Thank you, Chair. Currently, the licence to operate ends on the 31st of December. The council is in a position that it can extend its licences within its disposal, at least. We can extend licences, so the licence is to end on the 31st of December, but we are able to extend that licence. What I'd suggest is that would be considered as part of the upcoming report to committee.
Would that be a officer decision and a strategic director in conjunction with the chairman, or would it be a committee decision? I didn't quite get that.
I would suggest it's a committee decision. As much as I am able to do it as under delegated authority, my preference would be to bring it to committee.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, Councillor Steptoe wanting to speak on this.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for indulging me in speaking to the committee on this particular item. Just one very minor point on page 83, where it says wards. Can the officers just correct that? That's Roach South as opposed to Roach North and Rural. Very minor point. Chairman, I'm quite pleased to hear that the Task and Finish group has now been disbanded. I've been dealing with the freight house in one form or another since I first joined the council in 2008. I think that's probably before anybody else here this evening. With projects like Project Wyvern and other projects going forward, they've always been very utopian in their form. I'm a little confused by the recommendation on R1. I'm not quite sure what the direction of travel is, and I find that a little confusing. With regards to the work of the Task and Finish group, in my opinion, I feel it was undermined every step of the way by the previous administration. And I've never been happy with how the consultants were chosen and the utopian view that they then brought forward. For example, a hotel. Even the airport has ceased its plans to build another hotel. To remove half of the car park. To then divert the traffic, the right-of-way for the British Rail, or whatever they call themselves these days, through another access. For example, it goes over a culvert. Has anybody looked at whether that culvert can take a 40-tonne truck that the British Rail use? And the one that really did it for me was to create Bradley Way into a shared space. That's the main HGV route into Rochford and beyond to Wallasey Island and along. Turning that into a share space, a little like what's happened at Southend with the seafront, just seemed daft to me. Some of the scheme I felt was a pie in the sky and just a utopian dream. I was never happy with the way the work was dealt with and discussed, and no tenders were ever discussed on the work that was then subsequently carried out on the works that have been done in the freight house itself. Having run a number of very successful businesses, you start with the basics and build on them and expand to make larger profits one day at a time. It has been said that the building needed to meet net zero. In the real world, this sort of building, I don't think is ever going to be achievable, short of actually pulling it down and restarting. I believe that there is an update on the latest report on that side of things that will perhaps come up later. The parks and the grounds to the side are part of the area of the freight house and need to be taken into account when looking at the way the freight house is going to work. If you're having a wedding reception there, look at those beautiful gardens where you could take the photographs. I felt that that would be undermined by sticking a hotel in the middle of it. At this point, I was going to suggest to the committee that if I had been a member, I would be looking to put forward a working party, but it has been suggested to me that that may not be the best option. To take this forward, we need to go back to the basics. Get the building open, get it in use, get it doing what it should be doing, being a benefit for the residents of Rochford. And by that I mean Rochford Town as well as Rochford District. And I think that needs to have a time put on that, and I would suggest within a couple of months. There is no reason, in my opinion, that that building could not be opened in a very short space of time. Once the building is open, and I think there needs to be a lot of work done about the types of events there. One of the things that residents keep saying to me, and it's quite a simple thing, it doesn't necessarily need to have the building open, and that's having a boot sale in the car park. Some simple things like that, I think, will start to build the confidence of the residents in Rochford that the building is going to be back in use and will help the local economy. It will bring people into the town. You've got to have a starting point.
Councillor Steptoe.
I'm just going to finish, Chairman. I would urge that this committee take notice of my suggestions and that the building is opened so we can actually take on board what the residents of Rochford wanted in the last consultation that was carried out by the previous administration. Chairman, I thank you for allowing me to have the time to speak to the committee, and I will be interested to hear the now debate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. I think we're bringing this back to committee in September. So I know the committee gets to vote, but all members can turn up and say their piece if they want. I'm happy for members to come and say anything. Thank you very much. So anybody else? Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome this report and welcome seeing the Freight House reopen again. It's an essential part of Rochford Town Centre and the district, and it's excellent to see it back in use for our public again. Would like to wish Design Cabin CRC all the best in their future work. I look forward to attending their events, and I do hope that not just residents but all our councillors will also attend those events to make them a success. Just looking at section 1.14, just a note there, Chairman, if I may. The Council is working with the consultants on the options and initial costings for proposed options alongside how the works can be funded. Taking into account Councillor Steptoe's comments, I would like to say that as an administration, we are very confident that any plans for the Freight House do not rely on housing or a hotel or any other accommodation for the works of the Freight House to be viable. I say that again, as an administration, we are confident that any plans for the Freight House do not rely on housing or a hotel or any other accommodation for the works of the Freight House to be viable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Belton.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to echo Councillor Webb's points. I'm really pleased to see the design cabin in the Freight House for the meanwhile use, and I look forward to supporting them, and I hope everybody does the same. And to your point, to your opening remarks, absolutely agree. What we don't want is for the end of the licence to happen and the doors to close. We need to be in constant communication with the licence holder. This committee needs to be considering options, and we need to be looking forward. What we can't have is a year go past very quickly, LGR is upon us, and another building becomes at risk. So I think we have to ensure we're looking ahead, ready for that next phase. And I'm pleased to hear the officer say that we've already got options in place that we could lean on should both parties agree to that. So that's very pleasing. I hear what Councillor Hoy said earlier. Oh, it might have been Councillor Steptoe, sorry, regarding the direction of travel. I think it was Councillor Hoy. It was Steptoe, sorry. Regarding what is the direction of travel now. As I understand it, the direction of travel is set out in 1.13. That's kind of the point that we're alluding to. I think it might be taking on board some of the comments from tonight in reports if we actually point people to sections, because I had to read through a couple of times to understand where we were going. But certainly they are 5 objectives I can get behind. Again, there is nothing there that we haven't already discussed that we wouldn't expect to see in the report. So now it's time to take action. I was pleased of the work the previous administration done in terms of getting the meanwhile use into a position so that we had something which gave us a period of time now to take the big step as to what comes next. And there are some great opportunities there. The consultants, whether we like them or not, or how they were procured or where they came from, we've got some visions, we've got some ideas, and this committee need to have those presented in a tangible fashion with costs, with timings and with phasings associated to them, so that we in September can hopefully be in a position to say, we like what we see, let's start getting some contractors ready to deliver the outcomes, because that then allows us to start looking at the operating model part, the who can run a much more attractive and, to Councillor Steptoe's point, fully operational building, not part operational. So I'm excited for what the next 2 months hold for both this asset and the last. I want the committee to engage. I want to use the committee so that we debate in a public forum. But I welcome it, and the points set out in 1.3 I'm fully behind. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Belton. Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, thank you for letting me come back, Chairman. There was just a few comments made which I feel I just want to respond to. I'm pleased that the administration seems to favour moving forward with the consultants, and with other consultants maybe. All I just want to say is that when we took on the Freight House to get it reopened, and it was always going to be reopened at some point, and we managed to get it reopened. It was reopened on the 1st of July, effectively, with a new licence. What we were looking at was ambitious and with vision, because what we felt we just could not go back to what was there before, because what was there before did not work. So it's really important that the new Tory-run administration carry forward with a vision. It might be a different vision, but they need the vision and the ambition to make the Freight House work, because the Freight House is just part of the plans for the regeneration of Rochford, and they all need to work together. And I think without the vision and the ambition, it will fail. And I don't want it to fail under anybody's watch. I want it to succeed.
Absolutely agree, Councillor Hoy. Anybody else? No? Okay, right, so, members, I now have a motion that the recommendations on page 83 be approved. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Webb. Right, we will now vote on the recommendation that the committee note that the update on the Freight House project and endorse the direction of travel and the next steps are set out in the report. Those for? That is unanimous. Right. Members, item 9, the committee work programme. Members will now consider the committee work programme for 25-26. Any questions on comments or comments on the work programme, members? Councillor Belton.
You did cover this off earlier, but just for clarity, we are going to have the Freight House next steps on there for September as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Perfect. And then I would just like to suggest we don't add anything else on because they are two very meaty items that we're going to want some time to debate, I would suggest. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Webb.
Sorry, Chairman. Just one item I'd quite like picked up is around the work around park and stride. It was mentioned earlier, and it was part of the parking task and finish group, and there was some really good work taking place there. Looking at schools in Rayleigh, I believe, were developing that scheme, and we were starting to have discussions around schools in Rochford as well, using park and stride. I'd be very keen to pick that up and not lose that, please, if we could bring that to this committee at some point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any gentlemen? Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Councillor Webb. I think that was picked up in scrutiny as well, so I think we need to be careful that we don't double up. I know that it was mentioned in scrutiny, I raised it there, and we were told it wasn't necessarily this committee, but I'm happy to be corrected because it came under Essex for some reason, even though it was, as Councillor Sutton said, it was the parking working group which actually came up with the idea. Anyway, just moving on. So presumably on the 11th of September meeting, we're adding the Freight House today, is that correct?
Yes.
Right. I noticed that we've got in TBC, which I'm not sure when that's going to be, update on the Culture and Tourism Action Plan. I would hope that's going to be within this municipal year because it's not really confirmed there.
Yeah.
And the other thing, well, I would be expecting a yearly update on the economic growth strategy as well, because that was always done. Both those strategies were done as a annual review. So I would hope they both go in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'll have a chat with Laurie about putting them in.
Yeah, okay. And I'm really happy to be corrected on this because I know there was a lot going on around the May time, but it was indicated that this may now not be happening, that there would be some, and I've read lots of stuff and some things have been contradictory, that planning enforcement was going to be taken to this committee to assess the performance of it. Is that the case or not? Does that come under the performance report or not?
Oh,
That no longer coming to this committee? I have seen some charts which show it in this committee and some which don't.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask anybody.
Thank you, Chair. As far as I'm aware, based on terms of reference, planning enforcement does sit within this committee. On the committee work programme, the performance reports will include performance-related KPIs to that performance, so that will be in this committee, is my understanding currently.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No. Just one thing before we finish. Nice to let you know that the council's business awards will be held again this year, and the date to put in your diaries will be the 12th of March. So, and it'll be opening soon for people to, or later in the year, for people to take part. So, thank you very much, members. And I close the meeting at 8:43. That was confusing. It's understandable what we got though, wasn't it? Yeah.
So the individual bits where you read out the script, can you email them to me?
Yes.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Not right now.
No, I'll go home and probably do it at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Can I just take them?